Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another pre-recorded but being played out as live in the past. I'm in the past. Ooh. Episode of Big Hairy News. I think that makes sense. Tonight we're looking at September, and I hope you're just having a good time where you are. The show's come back live on the 13th of January. That's with Magenta and Emily, and then on the 20th of January, Chewie and I come back to say hello to you again. We're around though. I might even pop up on that week back with Emily and Magenta. Who knows? We'll see how it all pans out. Coming up on tonight's show, a disastrous performance by David Seymour on Q&A. It was truly terrible. Also, Katy Thomas. Katy Thomas has a disabled child, and Katy is a kind of former television personality, is sort of a media and social media personality. I've known Katy for quite a while. She was and has been a outspoken advocate for medicinal and legalizing cannabis because of her son, who she has used some cannabis oil, I think, all from green fairies, who are people who work in the shadows providing medicinal cannabis products to people. But what we talked to her about this year, well, in September, I should say, is what's happening with her and her disabled son under this government, because it's horrific. It is horrific when you hear her story. Like, I'm not saying this to be like, it's good content, but there will not be a dry eye in the house. It was horrific, the story that Katy told us about what's happened to her, with the support around her from government agencies because of this government to do with her disabled son. Just revolting. Also, Mehdi Hasan became a fan favourite this year from his performances on numerous shows around the world, particularly right-wing shows. So maybe we'll start the show tonight with when Mehdi Hasan went on Piers Morgan. And it was probably his appearance of the year, in my opinion, how he took apart piece by piece by piece of Piers Morgan. Be safe, be well. Hope you're getting a break. If you're not getting a break, hope work's not too busy for you at this time of year and you're still getting a chance to get out in the sun wherever you are in the evenings after work. But other than that, let's get into it with Mehdi Hasan on Piers Morgan. Oh my goodness. Now, what I'm going to do, let me show you, baby birds. See all these tabs here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's all Mehdi Hasan tabs. But I have actually highlighted a few because I thought we might run short of time, which I think are the best. This is an hour-long conversation, and I've got 9 clips out of it, and I could have 39. Like, every time they talked, we could have reviewed it and looked at it. But let's just go through a few of the ones that I purposefully starred in my own little book here. So I thought if we run out of time or run short, that these are the best bits. So this commentary here is happening halfway through the show, and it's Piers both siding an occupation. People both sides something. So this is an example of Piers Morgan both sidesing something.
But you're always very keen to put it all on Israel.
No, because if we're talking about...
I try and be a little bit more like, hang on, when you commit a terror attack on the scale of October 7th...
You both sides occupation and illegal...
No, I don't.
Yeah, you are. You just said...
I don't.
I try and be fair. You can't be fair to an occupier. By the way, when we talk about Russia and Ukraine, this is what frustrates me. And I know my friend Owen Jones sat here and...
This is brilliant. He makes Morgan look like a fool. Last time we talked about Piers Morgan, we said he's no longer a journalist. This just proves it time and time and time again. You can call him a chat show host, you can call him a shock jock, you can call him an interviewer, but he is no longer a journalist.
Said the same thing to you. When we talk about Russia, Ukraine, you don't do both sides. You blame Russia as the invader and occupier. You don't do that with Israel. That is the double standard on your part.
No,
I try and be consistent, Piers. I'm morally consistent. I say Russia, hold on, let me finish the sentence. Russia illegally invaded and occupied Israel.
Just so in case you're just joining us, it's not Mehdi's show. I know it feels like Mehdi's show, the way he's controlling this. It's actually not his show.
Someone just comes out and puts tape over Piers
And
Morgan.
Israel is doing the same thing in the West Bank, Gaza, the Golan Heights.
As you know, they are completely different.
Yeah, Israel's worse. It's been going on much longer. People living under much worse conditions. And they've killed more kids.
There is no similarity in these two situations.
Agreed. Israel's is worse.
It's not.
How many kids have been killed in Ukraine versus Gaza?
Well, in 1 year.
Ever.
In 1 year?
Ever. Take whatever point you want. More kids have been killed in Gaza than in Ukraine.
Okay.
Every human rights group agrees with that.
What's happened in Ukraine, and we can come to Ukraine. What happened in Ukraine is a Russian dictator invaded illegally.
We agree on Ukraine.
Yeah.
But we don't agree in Israel because you're not consistent.
I think Israel is much more complicated.
That's complicated, as my friend Ta-Nehisi Coates pointed out the other way, is just a good way of avoiding attributing moral responsibility. It's complicated. No, it's not complicated, actually. Israel is the occupier under international law. Israel is the one killing the vast majority of civilians. Right now, it's not a liberal democracy. It's run by neo-fascists now.
Well, I don't disagree with you. There are some right-wing headbangers on that cabinet. Also think that Netanyahu has to go. I also think the whole of Hamas have to go, right?
Under no scenario is it liberal democracy right now. Palestinians do not have the same rights.
But let me come.
There you go. So there's number one. Honestly, Chewie, this is just goes and goes and goes and goes. We'll go straight to the other clip because this is actually where he once again has his hypocrisy around Israel pointed out. This is Piers Morgan, by the way.
I'm saying that the way of the gun, the military solution to everything, is a failure, whether you think it's moral or immoral.
How should Israel respond?
I've told you, end the occupation. You don't want to talk about the occupation, Piers. You don't want to talk about the 500 dead. I'm telling you that's the root cause. Israel wants to do everything except what every smart person is telling them to do. Even members of their own security establishment are telling them to do. End the occupation. And then see what happens.
You say
nobody's waking up in the morning saying we want to kill Israel for no reason.
You say, Mehdi, all roads lead to the occupation.
Yes.
Okay? Israel would say all roads lead to Iran.
Who cares what Israel says? They've lied for the last year.
Who cares what they say?
Yeah, do you care what Russia says?
No.
This is what I'm saying. You're inconsistent. The occupier and the invader doesn't. I don't care.
It's not a barbaric.
Oh,
liberal circle, man.
They're not a liberal democracy. And second of all,
well, they are.
No, they're not. They're an ethnocracy. But even if they were a liberal democracy, you don't get to invade other people's land. That's not an excuse. Piers, you sound like you're justifying an illegal military occupation here.
No, I'm not.
You just did. You said they're a liberal democracy. Sounds like you're justifying occupation.
You're extrapolating two things together. Why?
I said it's an occupation. You said, but they're a liberal democracy. Sounds like a justification.
I'm just coming back to one thing.
He's so good.
God damn.
He's so good. And needless to say, it won't evolve in anything, but I have already tried to get Mehdi Hasan on this show. You know, we'll see. So, Chewie, look, I've got more to go, mate. I've got plenty more, but there's a space for you to chat so far.
He's absolutely correct. Like I love it. Piers' whole thing seems to be getting publicly owned. And go, no, I didn't. That's not what I said. Oh, no. I don't see that this is a hard thing to hold in your mind at the same point. Russia invaded Ukraine. So Russia bad. Russia do war crimes. Russia bad. Ukraine, good guy. See? Very easy. And then I can see here that if you just take what Hamas did on October 7th, you go, that's very bad. That is very bad. It's not as bad as what Israel said it was. Now, remember, Israel lied to everyone. Babies in ovens, babies being raped, headless babies. None of that happened. None of it. They haven't produced any proof. They have rebuffed every opportunity to get those hostages back because they have taken the opportunity to completely flatten Gaza. They've gone from the top all the way down the bottom, and then they've gone from the bottom all the way to the top. They keep on dropping bombs on tents. Like, it is very clear to me that Israel are the bad guys here. Yeah. Hamas, not good guys. Not good guys.
I think that's pointed out beautifully. The next clip we're going to play, I've just headlined Piers' inconsistency. So we might have a strike 3 coming up for him in that same kind of block. But look, Spit Icor says, I would love to if Mehdi came on the show, but I think we probably need another 1 million viewers on stream before we get him. Yeah, I think you're probably right. So that's up to you guys. It's got nothing to do with me and Chewie. That's your guys' responsibility, not ours. We do what we do. You guys do the rest. All right, let's have another clip. And you know what, Chewie? Because you've just brought up October 7th, there is going to be some other clips I play rather than the most important starred ones, because there is a part where they talk about using October 7th as an excuse. It's a very interesting kind of interaction as well. This is some more on Piers' hypocrisy.
Don't you think someone like you with your huge platform should be calling that out consistently?
I do, but I also
think... you just gave me a whole thing. Iran backs Hamas, Hezbollah, terrorism. That just sounds like an Israeli narrative.
You take one side completely.
Just like you do in Ukraine.
No, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm consistent. I take the side of the Ukrainian people under occupation and the Palestinian people under occupation. I'm consistent.
No, you're not. They're totally different situations.
You have to say that because you're not consistent.
And you have to say what you say.
No, but I literally described it. 2 people's under foreign occupation, 2 people's having their hospitals bombed, 2 people's having their kids killed, 2 people facing governments to say genocidal stuff. Yeah, I'm consistent.
One is a democracy and an ally of the
Says
West,
you.
and one is not.
Ally of the West. What little slip in there? What's that got to do with anything? So allies of the West get to be genocidal?
No.
Why did you say ally of the West?
I don't believe what they're doing in
So if Russia was an ally of the West, they could kill people in Ukraine?
I don't believe what they're doing in Gaza is genocide. You do, I don't.
Well,
genocide is the complete
genocide to one side. Whether we agree or not on genocide, and it is genocidal.
It's not
genocide. You just said they're your ally of the West. Why is that relevant?
I think it's important. You support.
So if you're an ally of the West, you get to kill kids.
No, you get.
So why is it relevant?
You support.
You're making my point for me, Piers. I'm consistent. I don't care whether you're an ally of the West or an enemy of the West.
Fine.
I care about what you do.
Yes.
And Russia and Israel both committing war crimes, both saying genocidal stuff.
But Mehdi, here's my point. You are so blindly anti.
Does it sound like other conservatives? What I'm trying to say is, what I meant by that is, here's what I'm saying. You know, it's like that's an for some people. I need a second to think what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm saying, and then comes out and says it.
Israel, that you frame everything.
I could say the same thing to you about Russia.
I'm very blindly against Russia.
Okay, that's again. So you're inconsistent. I'm consistent. I'm blindly anti-occupying Russia that occupies Ukraine, and I'm blindly anti in Israel that occupies Gaza. By the way, another area I'm consistent is I do think both wars need to come to an end, and they're going to come to an end through some sort of negotiation. I don't believe in prolonged conflict. I don't know. I'm not a negotiator.
What's
I
the negotiation in Ukraine?
I don't believe there's a military solution.
One of the things that's also very, very good about Mehdi is, when he doesn't know, he just goes, I don't know, like this. How's it going to come to an end? I've got no clue. It's not my area of expertise. And I think that in modern debate or modern conversation is a skill that too many people are afraid of. I don't know is a perfectly valid answer. If you don't know, unfortunately, and you see it amongst a lot of people online, they always try and have the answer. They always try, and what that then becomes is an ideological answer. And what that then becomes is like being a zealot, rather than thinking it through. Sometimes we don't know. And he's perfectly comfortable saying, I don't know, which I think actually shows strength rather than weakness to be able to acknowledge it.
Solution to either conflict.
Give me the solution.
I don't have one. Do you have a military solution? I don't think there is one.
We can't possibly give Putin what he's taken.
No, I agree.
So how do you do it?
I don't know. But I don't think the military continuing helps. I mean, how do you win militarily? I don't know how that works.
Would you have said that in World War II?
What do you mean?
When the Nazis were trying to take over the world?
No, there was a plausible plan to win, wasn't there, when the US came in?
Just to fight them.
And there were no nuclear weapons back then, Piers, as you know.
Okay, but you do think Putin would ever use them?
Do you not think he would?
No. Why would he? He's not an Islamic fundamentalist who wants to blow himself up.
Oh, that's a very racist thing to say.
It's not.
You're saying only Muslims want to use nuclear weapons?
No, I said
What?
Islamic.
Why would Putin not want to use?
I didn't say Muslim. I said Islamic fundamentalist.
Why is it Islamic fundamentalist?
Because Islamic fundamentalists kill themselves to get what they want.
But they haven't used nukes. The only people who've used nukes in history are the United States of America.
You're missing my point deliberately, and you're playing.
No, because I just find these
playing
weird.
the race card stupidly.
You're playing weird asides, Piers. You're bringing in Western allies.
I'm answering your question about whether I thought Russia would use nukes. No, because
the only people who would are Islamic fundamentalists.
They do not behave.
Western centric.
He does not think like an Islamic fundamentalist, where they will kill themselves to get their goals.
You know, the United States of America used a nuclear weapon, Piers, right? They're not Islamic fundamentalists.
You're missing my point. The point is, Islamic fundamentalists will kill themselves in the process of destroying others. Russia does not want to do that. Vladimir Putin doesn't want to kill himself.
Fair point.
Right? So my point about the nuclear threats, which he does all the time, is he takes what should be a deterrent. Look, we shouldn't have nuclear weapons, right? Period. But we do. Russia has 6,000.
As does Israel.
Russia has 6. I'm sure they do. And I put that question to Netanyahu, and he fudged it. But I'm sure, of course, they do. Right? But the point is, I don't think that the mindset of someone like Vladimir Putin is to start a war where he gets instantly vaporized.
No one brought this up, though, Chewie. Remember when the Ukraine conflict war started up, they were talking about how sick Putin is? Remember that conversation? So what if the last thing...
down the stairs.
what if the last thing he does before cancer takes him the next day is to fire off a bunch of nukes?
Yeah, or what happens when the next rung of politicians down, next rung of leaders down? What happens if his generals get sick of getting gulagged for failures in Ukraine and decide to do a coup?
Yeah.
What does a dictator do when he's staring down the barrel of a firing squad or being hung from a lamppost?
Yeah.
If he's got someone that's willing to turn the key for him, that's the thing. Like, that's the fear. The fear is that someone with that power is going to do something that is not reasonable.
Yeah, 100%.
I want to address Piers's comments. There's repeated comments about Israel being a liberal democracy.
Yeah, go.
Because they have an election. The most recent election that put Netanyahu into power, his greatest rival was assassinated under mysterious circumstances. Does that sound like a liberal democracy?
It's, and also, like, I correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't North Korea have an election, and it's like 99.99%? Then and if
they have democratic in the name.
Yeah, and if it's just about having an election, then why do they always talk about Hamas being dictators? There was an election there. Yeah, it was 2008, but they had an election. So why is that not a liberal democracy?
If you want to talk about Israel being a liberal democracy, does everybody that live in Israel have the ability to vote? No, because they're an apartheid state.
Yeah.
There's different voting privileges. Is Israel staying within Israel? Within their internationally agreed borders? No, and they never have. They are constantly nibbling away at the West Bank. They're constantly stealing Palestinian homes and land and building armed kibbutzes, armed and walled villages, and saying this is Israel now. And the stated objectives in Gaza, they're going, oh, yeah, we're going after Hamas. Well, at the same time, they talk about real estate deals. That's probably the only reason that they haven't used the nukes that they don't have. Is that it's bad for real estate values.
Yeah. They don't want the turf to be poisoned for the next 1,000 years.
We're coming up on a year since
October,
this happened
Yeah.
this week. And we have found that no matter what the world's history, and however many times we sit there and go, this horrible thing, we will learn from this and never again. We'll never have a Rwanda. We'll never have a Balkan conflict. We'll never have the horrors of the Holocaust again. Cambodia. We'll never have that again. We're having it live in Technicolor, in TikTok, on all our social medias. We're seeing again and again and again. And all that keeps happening is Israel keeps on getting aid from America to buy more bombs. The question of how this conflict ends, it's when the US decides to stop giving them bombs.
Yeah.
They can't make them themselves to the degree that they're using them, and that stops it. Netanyahu stood up at the UN this weekend and railed against the UN for being this anti-Semitic organization that's always had it out for Israel. The UN's part of the reason that Israel exists. Netanyahu ordered a strike on a neighboring country that had nothing to do with October 7th from the United Nations, an organization that was set up to stop war. Who is the bad guy here?
Hey, again, there might be quite a good place to pause because I don't know. We'll see what happens with the time. I might try and play 2 more clips, and I have to apologize. I'm not entirely sure because I just wrote like a headline. I should have been more detailed on my script, but this one is called the root cause of the violence. So this is about a 90-second chat between the two of them when they're debating the root cause of the violence. Let's have a look.
It is undeniable that the root cause of the violence is Israel, Israel's occupation, the genocide in Gaza. What did the leader of Hezbollah say? He said, we won't fire any rockets if you end the killing in Gaza. What did the president of Iran say? We won't retaliate for what you did to Ismail Haniyeh on Iranian soil if you end the killing in Gaza. What did the Houthis say? We'll stop blocking ships if you end the killing in Gaza. Where do all roads lead back to?
Why would you believe any of those people?
I don't believe any of them. I'm Ronald
Why would
Reagan.
you
You're citing
believe
them
Israel?
as if there's sort of gospel statements from people.
Say that again, Chewie. We didn't hear you.
Why would you believe Israel?
Yeah, the exact point.
Like he says, we can't believe Hamas.
Well,
At
but
every stage, Israel has lied to us, the international community.
And the point he's just about to make is, well, so don't believe them, test them. See what happens. Test them. And if they're wrong, continue on.
Any of them. I'm Ronald Reagan.
You're citing them as if there's sort of gospel statements from people who have unimpeachable.
I'll tell you why, if you let me finish. I'm Ronald Reagan.
A bunch of terrorists said, we won't do X, Y, Z if you do this.
I'm Ronald Reagan. I say verify. Call their bluff. If they're lying, call their bluff. Stop the Gaza fighting and then see what happens.
Yeah, but Israel has called Hamas's bluff.
When?
There was a ceasefire in place before October the 7th.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
That's not true.
Well, it is.
This is part of the bit I've been talking about where he's no longer a journalist. And Mehdi Hasan, I've never seen anyone, no notes, no nothing, knows it all, points it out, and embarrasses people with talking points.
There was a ceasefire in place before October the 7th.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
That's not true.
Well, it is true.
It's fundamentally false. They were attacking Palestinians the week before October the 7th.
There was...
In September, you can Google it on that tablet. What's your definition of a ceasefire?
Well,
Israel gets to attack people and not the other way around.
Okay.
In September, hold on. In September, you just made a charge that's not true. There's a tablet there. You can Google it. Guardian headline right there. You can go see the news report.
I don't Google during interviews.
Well, afterwards, everyone can. There's a Guardian headline, September 2023, a month before October the 7th. The headline is Palestinians shot in the ankles by Israel in Gaza, attacked. There were airstrikes in Gaza. And by the way, Gaza is not isolated. Gaza and the West Bank under international law are one entity. There were several hundred Palestinians killed in the West Bank before October.
But my point to you, Mehdi, is...
So there was no ceasefire. You just can't say it's just not true.
They would say there was a ceasefire.
And it's not true.
So here's one of them. Like I say, it's like everyone should go and watch this. I'm going to play another one because it's worth saying. You can see it's worth saying. This one is talking about October the 7th and using it as an excuse. That's the heading that I've given this clip. It's a bit longer. It's 2-3 minutes. Let's have a look.
You know, October 7th was used, as you and I have discussed before, as the excuse for killing tens of thousands of Palestinians.
Well, I would categorise it differently. I don't think they used it as an excuse to go and kill tens of thousands of Palestinians. They responded to one of the most egregious terror attacks of modern times.
But when does the response end? Nearly a year.
Well, that's the question. That is the question.
Well, that's when it becomes an excuse. When you carry on killing and killing.
Is it an excuse, or is it that they are wedded to the elimination of Hamas because Hamas has persistently said, we want to keep doing the same thing over and over again? And there's a correlation with Hezbollah, whose charter is very explicit. They stand for the eradication of Israel. I mean, that's what they're about.
That doesn't justify killing 500 people in a single day, I
didn't say it did, but
that's what bothers me. That's what happened this week. That's the big story. Hezbollah's charter is irrelevant to what we're talking about. That's not why they killed 500 people on Monday, Piers. I mean, Hezbollah's charter's been around for years.
I don't think it's irrelevant that you have a terror group on your doorstep who are wedded to your extinction. Why is that irrelevant?
I think the language you use is loaded, Piers. You say on your doorstep. Do you know they did a poll of Americans a while back who thought that Palestinians were occupying Israel? When we talk about this stuff, we make it sound like Israel is the one being occupied, besieged. Israel's the one that's occupying the West Bank and Gaza, longest military occupation in the world, going back to 1967. Israel is the country that occupied southern Lebanon. I mean, the world did not begin on October the 7th. 1978, Israel invades southern Lebanon. 1982, Israel invades southern Lebanon. Sabra and Shatila massacre. 2006, Second Lebanon War, murder 100 people.
This is one of those moments where you think someone's brought a sword to a gunfight. This is just that moment.
Sabra and Shatila massacre. 2006, Second Lebanon War, murder 100 people.
But you always make it sound like they're just doing this for the sake of it. They're not.
What are they doing it for?
Well, they've been provoked by Hezbollah.
Hezbollah didn't exist in 1978, Piers.
OK, I'm talking about the specifics of going on now. The provocation since October the 7th. Hezbollah's first...
We're just starting. Like, if we'd played that Simpsons thing right now, that stop hitting me, he's already dead, I don't know what you do this next part, because it's like he's already buried in the ground in his coffin and you're still hitting him from... I don't know how you do it, but that's what he does.
Response to October the 7th was to unleash rockets on Israel.
That's not true.
On October the 8th.
That's not true. That's not true.
That is what happened.
Where did they fire the first rocket?
They fired rockets on the 8th.
Where?
Well, you tell me.
No, you just said they fired Israel.
That is the classic answer from an interviewer. I might have used it once or twice myself, when they don't have a clue what they're talking about and they realise they've just been caught.
That's not true.
On October the 8th.
That's not true. That's not true.
That is what happened.
Where did they fire the first rocket?
They fired rockets on the 8th.
Where?
Well, you tell me.
No, you just said they fired at Israel. Where?
Well, they fired in the direction of Israel.
Where did they hit? They fired at the Sheba
you know the
Farms.
answer, tell me.
I do. They fired at the Sheba Farms, which, as I said earlier, is an area of Syria. Well, the Lebanese claim it's Lebanon. Syria claims it's Lebanon. Israel says no and is occupying the Sheba Farms. They fired at Israeli...
So into Syria at a military base.
Military installations in the Sheba farms. Now, have they got fired in Israel?
So
since?
they were firing
Of course
Israel.
have.
They were
Of course
firing.
have.
They were firing
Yes.
at an area that Israel says is theirs.
So goalpost shift. Get that straight away.
Israel
So they
since.
were firing
Of course they
Israel.
have.
They were
Of course
firing.
have.
They were firing
Yes.
at an area that Israel says is theirs.
No, Israel doesn't say that. Israel says it's Syria's. Because remember, Piers, Israel is occupying Syria and the West Bank and Gaza and Lebanon, would argue, parts of
how
Lebanon.
would you-
This is the problem, right? The core of the problem
I
is
know it's
Israel's territorial expansionism.
It's a mess.
Attacks, not a mess. It's Israel occupying multiple Arab lands, which leads to quote-unquote resistance or quote-unquote terrorism, whichever word. I don't care what word you want to use right now. But that is the core, right? You had John Mearsheimer on the show this week, made the same point. Deal with the occupation, then you deal with the violence. And look, has Hezbollah fired into Israel at civilian attack? Yes, I don't agree with that. But the reality is 82% of the exchange of fire between Lebanon and Israel since October the 7th has been done by Israel.
Okay.
82.
That's really important to hear. Remember when you hear people say Israel has the right to defend themselves. So what it means is basically for every time I punch you twice, you're going to punch me back 8 times. Defense. Right to defend itself. Every time I fire twice, you fire 8 times.
Israel at civilian attack. Yes, I don't agree with that. But the reality is 82% of the exchange of fire between Lebanon and Israel since October the 7th has been done by Israel.
Okay.
82%.
But here's
Is that not a provocation of
Let me
Hezbollah?
finish my point, which is that since October the 8th, 19,000 missiles, rockets have come from Hezbollah to Israel, right?
But way more from Israel into
Sorry,
Lebanon.
Pat,
I'm sure-
82%.
what was that number? What was that
19,000?
number? That 19,000.
Yep. The Piers said 19,000 from Hezbollah.
19,000
into Israel.
rockets.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to mention something that the Israelis are quite proud of, rightly
Yeah.
quite proud of. It's a very impressive system. They
The
have
dome?
something called Iron Dome
Yeah.
that shoots down ballistic rockets. It has a 90% success rate. So when you're talking about that whole, like, you punch me once, I punch you 8 times,
Yeah.
out of every attempt to punch me, I block 90% of those shots, and then I punch you 8 times.
So actually, that 20,000, so that works out for numbers quite well, 90,000. That means they fire back about 80,000. But that means of that 20,000, 2,000 get through, and you still send 80,000. So 2,000 rockets come from Lebanon into into Israel, and then 80,000 go from Israel back into Lebanon. That's the difference.
And what you're punching back with, they have absolutely no defense for.
Yeah, true.
There is no anti-aircraft in Gaza. You're punching with absolute impunity.
All right. This has got about 15 seconds. We'll just get to the end of it in case we've got a bit of gold we need to hear.
October the 8th, 19,000 missiles, rockets have come from Hezbollah to Israel, right?
But way more from Israel into Lebanon.
Well, I'm sure.
82%.
Of course they've responded. What else are they supposed to do?
82%.
But
So
aren't they-
this is not two equal sides.
so they can't defend themselves.
But the vast majority of attacks is on Lebanon.
Okay,
not the
but
other
would
way
you
around.
There you go. That was that one. Is. Look, where our time is stretching. There is one more that I could play because he does do a very good. It's only 2 minutes as well. Catch-all of Morgan's journalism when he challenges him on some of the numbers he's saying. What do you reckon? Should we do another 2 minutes or should we wrap?
Oh, I'm torn.
All right, we'll
We
do another.
have run very long.
We'll do another 2 minutes in. 'Cause I think it's important here once again just to show you how he is no longer, and then we'll just get out straight away. He is no longer a journalist, and the example given when, and you know we like doing this, like we like drilling down into the data. What happens here is you hear Piers Morgan just regurgitating data given to him, talking points basically.
Where 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists were targeted specifically.
How do you know that?
What do you mean? How do I know that?
You just said 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists were
How
targeted.
many was it?
I don't know. I'm asking you. Made the claim. How
That
do you
is
know it was
what's been
3,000?
reported.
By
Do you
who?
dispute that?
Yeah, I dispute everything Israel
But
says.
you
They've
don't know
lied
the
for a
real number.
year,
You
Piers.
don't know the real number.
But I didn't give a number. You did.
Well, what has been the number from the other side?
I didn't give a number. You said 3,000 terrorists. I'm wondering why a
That is
journalist
what's been reported.
No, it's not reported. It's what's said by Israel. Or it says what's said by people speaking on behalf of Israel.
So
was a little girl who
Israel
died?
has.
Was a
Israel,
little...
hang on. Israel hasn't even said it, did it?
They have in private. It's been reported widely
you?
to go. No, to the American government.
Okay, but
It's
don't
been-
say they said it publicly. They haven't.
But
Obviously, I
killed.
believe they did it, right? But
I believe they did it
but
too.
You're saying they said this in public.
You just gave a 3,000 number, and I'm wondering. I just saw a little girl's funeral last week. Was she a Hezbollah terrorist in your view?
No.
So then why did you say 3,000 terrorists? There was a kid killed.
I was about to say that in the process of targeting very specifically in an extraordinarily whichever way
In
you
a
look
terror attack.
Well, that's what I'm going to come to. So they target 3,000 Hezbollah terrorists with their pagers, walkie-talkies, and so on. In the process, a small comparative to that
War
number,
crime, by the way.
a small number of civilians get killed, which is obviously deplorable. But my point to you is, if someone's been chucking rockets over for a year at you and your people, you've had to display 60,000 people from the north.
The thing that he's so oblivious to, this sounds like he's describing Gaza and what Israel's doing, but what he's trying to do is describe Israel and what Hezbollah is doing. But if you listen to the words, it sounds like he is describing Gaza and Israel being the attackers.
Yeah. At you and your people. You've had to display 60,000 people from the north of your country because of this relentless bombardment.
From Israel.
And you eventually respond in such a precise, targeted fashion.
Okay.
Right? And in the process, some civilians are killed, which is never acceptable, can never be condoned, never be supported. But if it is right, as has been widely reported by all mainstream media, that 3,000 terrorists
people associated with Hezbollah. Not everybody in Hezbollah is a terrorist.
Okay. But, okay.
Like a driver, a nurse.
3,000 members of Hezbollah were targeted, right?
Yeah, that's about it. So the point that he was making was when you just repeat the talking points, and look, everyone's been a victim of, I've probably done that from time to time, but we do like to go, even when you put up that photo before, Chewie, of the Atlas meeting, I'm like, I'd like to check to make sure that is what that actually is. Where's that come from? We should double check because we will always try our hardest not to just to put out their talking points. But there you go, Chewie, look. We pretty much got through all the clips. It's gone longer. People have stayed, so they wanted to see it. Go and watch the whole thing. I've seen people saying they can't watch the whole thing. But there you go. Oh gosh, is this good or bad? Piers Morgan is the Sean Plunkett of the UK. who does that insult more? I'm not entirely sure. That probably insults Piers Morgan more, to be honest.
The only way that Piers Morgan's arguments even come close to working is that October 7th was a starting point. And it is not. And I have said this so many times. If you want to understand what is happening now, you need to have a look at what's happened before. You need to see the pattern of behavior in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Israel, Israel's relations with Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, Egypt, the whole thing. Like we have such a conflicted attitude globally towards Israel because of the Holocaust, because Israel for a long time was a Western bastion against a Middle Eastern area that was heavily allied with the Soviet Union. It is drummed into us generationally that we need to stand for Israel as this bastion, as Piers said, of liberal democracy, and because we let the Jews get murdered wholesale in the 40s. Now, there are so many Jews worldwide that are standing up and going, the reason that we stand against what Israel is doing here is because of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
They are doing the torture, the putting people in camps, the indiscriminate punishment murders that the Nazis did. The fact that Netanyahu and his regime want you to equate the Israeli state to all Jews. And so if you criticize the Israeli state's action, then you are anti-Jew, you are anti-Semitic. And they know that reaction that has with anybody that feels guilty about what happens during World War II. Now, I think it's pretty clear that this whole conflict and this wholesale murder and these terrorist attacks on both sides can be stopped tomorrow if America cancelled all of their aid and parked a carrier battle group in the Mediterranean and enforced a no-fly zone and intercepted anything that took off. Any rocket from Hezbollah or Hamas or whatever is left, anything that launches from an airfield in Israel, we could stop this tomorrow. but nobody has the stones to do it because we're not in a Tom Clancy book, and these big things just don't happen.
And look, I just think that the idea, the thing that Mehdi did so well in there, he didn't justify any kind of illegal action from Hamas or any other group.
No.
So what he was saying was, what do you expect a group of people to do who are being oppressed? Do you expect them to push back legally or illegally? Do you expect them to sit there and take it? Like, what are our expectations here? What is the realistic response here? Not to support it, not to say it's good, none of those things, but let's be real. What's going to happen if you keep donking the kid in the face? Eventually, the kid's going to punch you back. You know, that's human nature. That's what's going to happen. And I just love that this line is made. And Piers Morgan looked like such a fucking idiot. Yes, I'm one-eyed when it comes to Russia, as am I, says Mehdi. And then Israel? No. It's like occupier, oppressed, bombing hospitals, definitely against that. Yeah, no, that's a bit grayer. Yeah, it's just not. It's not Chewie. It's not Chewie if what you're worried about is the people who are suffering the bombings. It is if what you're worried about is the geopolitical bullshit that goes on around it. That's when it's not.
Israel's turned themselves into pariah state, and they've destabilized that entire region. And I think, look, I'm someone that's always followed like war history and geopolitics stuff, and I've looked a lot at the Israeli wars of the Cold War, you know, the 6-Day Wars and the Yom Kippur War and all of that sort of thing. And it's certainly one thing that I've noticed as this discussion about Gaza and Palestine goes on, is that those narratives and those events were always told from a Western Israeli point of view. And the more that I go back and revisit them, I'm like, okay, I kind of see where this is coming from. I want you, chat, if you haven't read about this, I suggest you do the wee Googles. This is your homework. Google the USS Liberty incident. Happened in 1967. But the pattern of behavior from the Israeli state is the same. The cliff note to this is they attacked a US Navy ship and killed or wounded 174 US sailors. They said it was an accident. My bad.
Hey, welcome back, Whānau. Looking forward to catching up with you on Monday as we go back to being live. Just a huge thanks to our patrons, who some of you have been a part of us since 2022. 2023, crumbs, it's a couple of years now. Really appreciate you guys. The patrons are the people. Yes, we've got the store open and stuff, but the patrons are the people who help us do this thing on a monthly basis. When we're doing pre-records like we are right now, and obviously the super chats are down, and even though the store is open, it's obviously down because we're not here every night saying, hey, look at the store, hey, look at this. It's the patrons that help us get through this. So basically the patrons literally enable us to have some time off, which we desperately need. And also pay for a whole bunch of other things as well. I'm going to do some work up in Waitangi. Patrons are some of the people helping to pay and cover some of that work whilst I'm up there for Waitangi Day. If you like what we do, if you're a fan of it and you want to do something more than just share our content, then what you can do is head to patreon.com/Big Hearing News, as it says at the bottom of the screen, and just do what you can do. I mean, like, the most important thing is that we have your eyeballs and your earballs. Is that a thing? But other than that, you know, telling people about us, lots of ways you can be advocates. If one of those ways is also a small financial contribution per month, then patreon.com/Big Hearing News. If it's not going to jump up and down on you. Enjoy the content. Help support us some other way by sharing it around and telling people about us, being our advocates, buying some stickers, sticking them by Parliament, which I've been getting pictures from you guys, sticking those Nicky No Boats ones up by Parliaments. And just keeping on. So patreon.com/Big Hearing News if you want to be a part of that. Thank you for all those who are supporting us, and let's get back to the best ofs. David Seymour on Q&A over the weekend. Let's just get into some of the questions. Jack Tame, kind of, you know, this new truancy rules things they've got. Jack Tame's found the hole in it. There's really an easy way around that.
To stop a parent from just blaming illness. A parent certainly could do that, and a lot of this is about what you might call soft power, or selling it to people. So better information about what really is illness, and when you sometimes can go, because we were told for several years that health comes above all else. It's often true, but not always. So we publish that guidance.
I mean, if you think about a parent though who's got a kid who's sitting around at home playing video games all day at the moment, and the parent for whatever reason isn't getting that kid to go to school, if the school then calls the parent and says, "Why is David or Jack not in school today?" There's nothing to stop the parent saying, "Oh, he's sick." They certainly can, but I mean, I think you've got to be a bit cautious about stereotyping. These situations are so complex.
Did you hear that? They certainly can. So there you go. There's the whole truancy plan out the window with one sentence. So the people they're trying to get to are what they would describe as perhaps difficult students with difficult parents. If that's the makeup, if you've got parents who also can't give a shit about the authority, figure, then how's this going to help? The only way it's going to help is if then they have people turning up, Chewie. And that's the next step. Or forcing these people to go and get sickness, certificates from their doctors, which they may not be able to pay for or afford. So that's where we're going. That's where they're going. Because actually, that's the only way the system will work. If they've got some kind of truancy Gestapo that then goes around and checks that all those children are actually sick, or else it just won't happen. It won't work like they think it's going to. It won't work anyway, but that's the only way for their system to be put in place. And I'm not using the word Gestapo to call them Nazis. It just seemed right at the time. I'm saying that because we're about to have a chat with Mehdi Hasan, who him and Piers Morgan agree that using those kinds of words aren't necessarily good. They're not the Gestapo because that's their politics. They're like the Gestapo because that's their politics. Anyway.
Complicated from what I've heard, talking to people in the last few months. So, for example, I talked to a youth aid police officer recently who has a collection, he tells me, of Xboxes and PlayStations that he's confiscated off children out of their homes. And I said, hang on, aren't you supposed to stop burglary? And he said, well, actually, the parents asked me to take them because the parents don't feel...
You know what? I don't believe that for a second.
I would like to speak to that officer.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a second.
They want them to go to school. They don't feel they have the authority within their own home. They're literally asking him to play the bad cop. So, what we're doing here with the stepped attendance response scheme is we're saying the parents have obligations, the students have obligations, the school has obligations, and we as government and other government departments such as Oranga Tamariki and the police also have obligations. As a child's attendance gets worse, if it goes outside that 90% zone, then there's a stepped response at each stage here.
It just seems like a very...
There we go. So there's the first thing, Chewie. Truancy model, if the parent just goes, "Oh, Jack's sick," then the truancy model falls over. We'll keep trucking, because we've got a few to get through, because the next conversation, which I'm sure infuriates most people, is talking about school lunches.
School lunches. Documents released with the budget found the free school lunch program was super effective. Quote, initial findings indicate the program is having a profound impact on the well-being of learners. Profound. You then cut $107 million in funding from the scheme. What will your cuts mean for the impact of that program?
So a couple of things. First of all, if you want to get...
Very important question that he asked in the framing of the question. For the impact. He's talking about the impact of the scheme, not the cost of the scheme.
Down to really robust evidence, like really statistically, valid comparisons of schools that have them and schools that don't have them, and do more children come to school. The ministry did 5 different studies. One of them found that there may be a 1.6% improvement in children coming to school at a school that has the healthy school lunch program.
So that standard proof study found it was associated with improved attendance for some kids, which was equivalent to 3 days annually, which is substantial.
Well, if there's 200 days a year, then 1.6% is 3 days, isn't it?
Isn't that funny? How 3 days is substantial, but we've said this before, when they want to use the numbers in a certain way, they'll change the metric. So he's changed it to 1.6 rather than 3 days. Because, they're trying to keep people at school for all but 5 days a term. I know there's 4 terms, but 3 days is not insignificant to help kids stay at school. But that's not good enough for these guys because it's costing money and there's landlords to pay off. 3 days, not good enough.
I agree with that. 1.6% is what they found. Now, all I'd say to you is that if they really have, as you said, profound increases in well-being...
That's what your advice said, not what I said.
Well, it's not my advice. It's advice I think
advice provided to you as the associate education.
I get all sorts of advice.
It's a profound impact.
Oh, okay.
You do.
Should we give them some advice? This is this time where they actually ignore the experts. Remember how Nicola Willis was saying last week, I think it was around the ferries, wasn't it? Oh, we're just waiting for the experts to tell us. And they use the experts to delay as an excuse. And then when they don't want to use them, which is every time they make a legislative change, they ignore the experts. So, yep, he's been given expert advice. And he's like, look at that smirk, that rimmer smirk. Oh, yep, we get lots of advice. I'm sure you do walking down streets in New Zealand. I'm sure you hear all sorts of pieces of advice, Chewie.
Oh, freely offered advice too.
Yeah.
Where's it gone? Where's it gone? Great comment. Keep defending people who don't care if their children are in school. You guys are disgusting. Cole, we're just playing the video, buddy. But in this video, it features a libertarian going full nanny state. Someone who once said it's not the state's job to raise your children. Just a little bit of hypocrisy there. Just thought I'd point that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you got to sort of square the circle, right? Like some people say it's a profound impact, but it didn't even get a 2% increase in actually coming to school. If it was something was profoundly,
no, see, it didn't say profound impact on attendance. It said profound impact on the well-being of learners.
No, I understand what you're saying, but my point is
it's a broader impact, isn't it?
My point is that if something,
Jack, I understand what you're saying, and your point doesn't line up with the narrative I'm trying to paint. So I'm going to minimise it and move on to my point now.
Was profoundly improving your well-being, wouldn't you make more than a 2% effort to get it?
Well, my question is, what impact will your cuts to that funding have on the?
Possibly it's going to make it even better. I'm cautious about how I comment on this right now because as we speak, excellent people on the expert advisory group are in negotiations with the providers, so I don't want to compromise their position. But all I'll say is that there's been a lot of interest. It's very competitive. It's amazing what you can do. I was even amazed at the quality of the offerings from the providers. And put it this way, we may well end up doing this at $3 a student. In fact, I'm pretty confident we will. I suspect we might actually get better product out of it. And previously, Labor were doing it at 8.
You were saying that word before about magic, Chewie. That magic word. That they're going to pay a lot less and the quality of the food's going to be better. This is magical world we live in. Do you think? Maybe they're going to go to the bowl. Maybe they're going to the bowling green. Maybe they're getting all the meals delivered from the bowling green here in Dunedin. Maybe bowling club.
So again, he paints it like they always do. Is that Labor spent all the money for low quality meals when they could have just spent less money on high quality meals. What a bunch of fucking idiots.
Yeah.
Like there's so much, we've covered this so much with him talking about school lunches. The man does not know how to feed in bulk. And the fact that if you fed all the kids, you would be able to do it cheaper per head. You would also remove any stigma about poor children get free meals, non-poor children don't need to. And so you cast that social curse at people. He's completely brushed past the fact that it's good for learners to be fed, which is just some rock solid, like, did you not know this? And he's just focused on the fact that they couldn't bribe kids to school with a free meal. And somehow he's thinking by cutting it and lowering the quality and the per head price somehow, that the cheaper meal is somehow going to do it. What planet is this guy on? Does he even keep track of the threads that he's trying to weave?
Right, this clip's got 60 seconds. Let's get through it.
$8.61. Now, if they had introduced the model we're introducing 5 years ago, they could have saved nearly $1 billion and got the same result.
It wasn't always $8.61, just to be clear. It was between just over $6 and $8.60.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, the point is we're saving $3 to $5.
Sure. But so back to that question, though, because I think you talked about the tendering process. Is there a risk that you will get worse outcomes by cutting funding?
Well, I think there was already a wide variety of outcomes, but what we're seeing in the
across the board, though, is there a risk?
Well, there's always a risk until you sign the contract and see the first lunch sign up.
So what is that risk? Talk to us about that risk.
Well, the risk is that people won't like the quality that they get. I mean, that is a risk. I'd be lying if I said that we can absolutely guarantee what's going to show up at the end of a tendering process, but every indication is that we can do as well or better with less money by being smarter. That's what every business, firm, farm, family in this country has had to do for the last 3 years. Now we've got a government that's doing it.
See how he muddies it, though? He says there's every indicator that we can do better with less money. And then he goes, every business, home, farm has had to do that for the last few years. He said we can do it better for less money. And then he said, and others have had to tighten their belts. They're not the same thing. He's not saying everybody else who did this had to save money and they all got better outcomes as well. So he's really kind of trying to, it's this shell game we talk about. He's selling the idea that they can do better on less, and then he's saying everyone else has had to pay less or spend less. But he's not saying all the other people who spent less are doing better, but they're going to. It's just it's an ultimate shell game. In fact, that's the end of the clip. It's up to there. I've got clips on the treaty principles to come from him, Chewie, but do you want to jump in with anything in between?
Yeah, look, I love that he's acknowledging that the quality might go down and that they might not like the quality that they get when he's talking about lowest common denominator slop that he wants to serve our young citizens.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the plan, personally, because then the next stage is, hey, look, we've spent all this money. We've been so generous and we've provided these meals, but there's so much wastage because it's fucking boiled polystyrene blocks and gravy, and then he can just write off the whole thing as not being an effective program. David Seymour doesn't give a fuck about these kids unless he's Snapchatting them. Like the fact that he's associate education minister and this is the best that he's got, full nanny state, a mysterious community cop that seems to be hoarding Xboxes, and we can do more with less on the natural superiority of the right-wing party for feeding the masses is just such fairyland bullshit. I don't know why he didn't just burst into flame.
I'll tell you something that's worth keeping an eye on as well. It's a thing that I saw today, actually. There was a YouTube clip talking about some big YouTubers, KSI and Mr. Beast and Logan Paul, who are starting up a school lunches thing. And I'm just going to show you a freeze frame. I don't want to get kicked or anything, but there was a doctor who did this conversation, and there's this product out there at the moment called Lunchables, and these YouTubers are going up against them with a product called Lunchify or something like that. And the most interesting point, and this is worth keeping out, this is the product that's out at the moment, Lunchables, and he went through and he kind of worked out all the issues with it and what it was. But
heavily processed shit.
But the biggest thing he found was Lunchly. That's what it's called. Those Lunchly products are healthier than the Lunchables, but the most interesting thing is the sodium and the sugar and all those kinds of thing levels were below recommended, but they're only 300 calories. And the doctor points out children are supposed to get 650 calories at lunchtime. That's what they need for their bodies to work. So actually, if the meal doesn't give them enough calories, then their brains won't work well enough in school. So therefore, if you then made all these kind of processed shit meals sort of thing, if you made them all to the amount of calories using the formulas that these guys are doing, then you'd be having like double or triple the amount of sodium and sugars, because they can say there's X amount of sugar in this option, but what they're not saying is this option only gives you about 40% of the calories you need. So to actually have a meal made of this stuff to the correct calorie level you need, it would be 2.5 times what this is, and then that puts it off the charts altogether. And it made me think about school lunches here, about what they're going to do. Really, really, really careful to keep an eye on what they're offering, and not just what it is on a health scale to do with calories and sodium and all that kind of stuff, but what calories it has got, that it reaches the amount, not just how many salts and sugars and carbs and fiber that it's got, because it's got to be the right number of calories for a kid's brain to work through the rest of school as well. So that's just by chance I saw that today, and it's I'm intrigued by it. Indeed.
Just those three pitching a product at children just gives me the shits, as I'm sure their product will. They're just terrible people.
The next clip we're going to look to is we can get to a couple of clips now on the treaty principles. The first treaty principle was, the first conversation was Jack Tame talking to him about how treaty principles was supposedly a bottom line for you, but it's not going to go through. But it was a bottom line. What happened there?
So during the election campaign, you said a binding referendum on the treaty principles would be a bottom line in exchange for your party's support in government, an absolute top priority. And yet here we are, a year on, and the only way that we will have a binding referendum is if National agrees to pass your law, which the Prime Minister says explicitly and in the plainest language he will not support. So why do we capitulate on that bottom line?
Well, they also said that there was no way that they'd have any of it. I guess what you found is that you've got two parties, and I think Chris has said the same thing. Neither side's particularly happy with it because no one got everything they wanted. But critically, what we have allowed is...
This is your number one priority during the campaign. All of those people who supported ACT did so knowing that your absolute top priority was, the bottom line was a binding referendum. And here we are, you're in government, and we don't have one.
Well, what we do have is a bill that is finally going to democratise what the treaty principles...
It's the wrong bill we want to hear about, Mr. Seymour. The bill is $4 million. For this waste of time. That's the only bill that matters, to be frank.
Mean, because for a long time, unless you're a judge or on the Waitangi Tribunal or an academic or a public servant, you don't get much say on what our founding document means. For the first time...
I love that statement.
What the fuck?
Yeah, you don't get much say. Like, could you imagine in America if it was like, well, everyone of the public needs to decide what the amendments in the Constitution, if they should all decide. Like, you know what, Seymour, you're right. We don't all get a say on our founding document. It's a founding document between two parties. You don't get to rewrite the whole thing and have 5 million people sign off on it. It doesn't work that way. Shall we?
Yeah, I wasn't there. My name's not on it. I wasn't a representative of Queen Victoria either. I don't expect a democratic say in the Treaty of Waitangi. What a ridiculous position that is going to play well with his support.
Yeah.
But absolutely makes zero sense to anyone with even just a skerrick of a brain.
Yeah. All right, keep going.
We're going to democratise the debate on that. Now, is that as far as I'd like to go? No. Has it significantly changed the debate? Yes, and you can see that because of the reaction you're getting from all these people who don't want the great unwashed to be able to have a say about our constitutional future.
We'll talk about the process once the bill is introduced. What is the risk if we don't go through this process and have this debate?
I think the risk is that we increasingly adopt a version of the treaty which says it's a partnership between races. That's what the Court of Appeal said. It's what the Prime Minister...
It's a partnership between the Crown and iwi. The dog whistling he's doing, it's a partnership between races. So if one of the people who came across and agreed to it was Welsh and one was English and one was Scottish, they signed on behalf of the Crown, the Queen. They didn't sign on behalf of a race. And with the people who were already there, who were the owners of the land, it was an agreement between the owners of the land and the Crown. This dog whistling racial undertones of, I got to signed on based on race. It's just because they were different races doesn't mean it was an agreement based on race. If I moved to a foreign country, if I moved to India and wanted to start up a business, and I started up a business and I signed a document with a group there, a business there, it wouldn't be even though we were different races, it wouldn't be an agreement based on race. It will be an agreement based on the people who were there making the offer and me coming on board and saying, yes, I want to do this. This dog whistling is so revolting.
A version of the treaty which says it's...
Sorry, Joey.
I was just going to say we've had a prime minister call us bottom feeders. We've had a deputy prime minister, or soon to be deputy prime minister, refer to most of us as the great unwashed.
Yep.
Is this just out the gates arrogance?
Yeah. And it's smarmy, and it's also, I think what you're saying, one of the problems Seymour has now is getting re-elected, probably holding this government together once he becomes deputy prime minister and trying to become the preeminent number 2 in the right to get rid of Winston. And so he's still speaking to his base and the base he'd like to attract for the next election.
Partnership between races. That's what the Court of Appeal said. It's what the Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern repeated 35 years later, sorry. And as a result, we increasingly see ourselves not as human beings and New Zealanders with challenges and choices and problems to solve and overcome, and as we go through our lives, we see each other as Maori or non-Maori. And once you start telling people to think of each other in racial terms, the danger is people will start to actually do it. I feel to some extent they have, and our country's become more divided. I think it's important that we actually say, no, everyone's allowed to have a discussion about this. It's not going to be all terrible. Actually, New Zealanders can have a discussion about our constitutional future. We're going to have that discussion. Will it go as far as we like? Possibly not. On the other hand, as I've said...
You accept that now?
Well, it's possible that they won't, but I also just make the point that I think that this is going to be a lot more positive and uplifting than people believe. And once you see where it gets to, people say, we actually can have a say in our constitutional future. It might end up being a more popular idea than some people expect.
How much is...
I do not think so. One other clip that I want to share with you. I don't know what that one is. Oh yeah, that's the Gaza one. And this last clip is about treaty principle. Well, basically, it's under 2 minutes. Why even bother? Like, why bother doing this? It's you know what? We don't need to play that because I'll give you the answer. You know what? I'll give him credit. His rationale for why bother makes a logical conclusion and sense. He says why bother, and his answer to that is, well, we could have said that about when Michael Laws brought out the assisted dying bill like 20 years ago, but that started the conversation what's gone into making that law. That's the pitch he's making. He's basically stealing the Green Party manifesto, where you ask Julian Genter, and I have done this, why, you want affordable quality housing as a right, and she does say, well, it's an aspiration for maybe 20 years from now. That's what he says. Why bother? Because it's an aspiration, and maybe in 20 years from now, it'll be a change. I think that's all we need to get from him, because that's what the whole last clip is, and we've got more to get to, Chewie. But yes, sir, you welcome. Jump in if you want to say anything to do with this so far.
It's great to see David Seymour be a twat on 3 subjects all at once. But I think the most egregious thing here is the positioning that he takes around this reframing of the treaty principles. That there's this laughable notion that we need everyone in this country to have a democratic say on a treaty that was signed between the Crown and the Indigenous people of
the landowners,
this place.
People who were here first.
Is laughable. Like, I think he's panicking, because the longer this goes on, there is more understanding amongst the general public now about let's say the treaty just as a catch-all, but we're really talking about Tita Riti. If someone like me all the way down here in the South Island could learn that actually there are 2 treaties and it isn't a direct translation, and under international agreement it's the one in Toreo that is the important one, the indigenous that's language. The one that most people signed, then it can get through to any numbskull out there about what we're talking about. But the thing is,
unless they're being disingenuous. If they're being disingenuous, it won't get through. Anyone who chooses to participate in this conversation as an honest actor, let me put it to you this way: if someone from Indonesia signed a contract with someone from France, right, and it was the Indonesian company wanting to say something to the French company, and they wrote the agreement both in Indonesian and in French, the French people are going to understand and sign the French version, because that's what they understood. No difference. In the treaty, both versions, Māori and English, Māori understood the Māori version. The English one, whilst it is a historical document, is basically a paperweight when it comes to law, because that's not the one that Māori understood. Māori understood the one that was in Māori. So that's why that carries more weight. Sorry, Chewie.
And just historically, that's the reason why the one in Māori is the one that has the most signatures. There's about 50 signatures on the English translation, and that's purely because they ran out of room, and they just basically said, "Yeah, this is the same thing." Okay, and then we threw it away and let rats chew on it. That's how important it was. It got colonists in the doors, and that's all that matters. But now David Seymour wants to put it up as this is something we should all have a say on. And I think the most dangerous and malicious thing that he's doing here is he's going after immigrants to this country that have zero understanding of this.
Yeah.
And going, if you don't go along with me, you're a second-class citizen to the Māori. Which is just such a bald-faced fucking lie. But he knows that that's where he'll get numbers. What he's scared about is the generations that are coming through school now with a greater understanding of New Zealand history than we have ever had. And he knows that if he leaves it for another generation, there is no way that this is going to fly. You cannot put race relations in this country to a fucking referendum, which is what he wants.
Yeah.
You just can't do it.
Welcome back, team. Hope you're enjoying the best of. Reminder, we're back here again live from Monday of next week. Looking forward to getting back to it. Really important heads up about the store at the moment. A couple of things to know. It is open, bhnshop.nz, bhnshop.nz. It is open, but what we're probably going to do is we're probably going to take down perhaps the Chewies, the Nikki No Boats, and the BHNs in the lead up to Waitangi Day for a couple of reasons. One is I run the store. I pretty much, either I or one of my family members pretty much packs up everything. We print all the shirts, we fold them, we take them to the post shop, and I'm going away for 2 weeks on honeymoon. So I will be out of here by about the 25th of January. We're talking about. Now that means I can't really leave the store open for others to monitor because they don't have the access. So what it means is the buffer in particular, I'm thinking that people are going to want for Waitangi Day. And if you do want a buffer, there are limited numbers there. As you can see, the green, is that green? No, that's rust. There are some green 3XLs left, but the rust 3XLs have all gone. There's the rust one there, of course, which I think is my favorite. Although I might make myself a green one. I haven't got one yet. Which means basically kind of after the 25th of January, you may not be able to get buffer gear. And I'm guessing buffer gear for Waitangi Day could be quite important for some people, as about the idea that we're talking about what it is. Same to be said for the hoodies. You can see, look, pinks have all gone. Maroons, I think there might only be one of, and it's in 3XL. There are greens though, or maybe there's only green larges as well. So the numbers are limited, and the store's likely coming down once I go on honeymoon because we won't be able to service the store. So what I'm saying is you need to get in now. You need to get in now and get your gear if you want. The other items are much of the same. Everything's still available as I record this, but at some stage before the 25th, we'll be taking some of these down and putting them back up again once I get back from honeymoon, but that'll be about it. So long-winded, I'm sorry. And it's a terrible way to do a clip that's going to play 4 times this week or 5 times this week because you'll remember it clearly. But bhnshop.nz if you want to get some merch. And even though we're in pre-record mode, I'm still in Dunedin, we're still here, and we will still send out gear. So if you want it, especially the buffer gear for Waitangi Day, then order it today. bhnshop.nz. Good evening and welcome to the show, Katy Thomas.
Oh, kia ora, Paul
Kia
Murray.
ora. How are you, mate? I've already told people about you and me podcasting and what we did all then and there. So you're already part of the family. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to see you again. It's been a while.
You too, mate. Yeah, really good. Okay. Now, the reason we're connecting is I saw an article on RNZ. Let's just be honest, that's where it's out there, about the 6 months on from the disability cuts.
Yes.
And I guess I'm a little bit embarrassed to think we should be doing more of this, Chewie. We should be realizing after the big news cycle has finished, these news items still affect people in their everyday life. And I just thought this is a really important thing to speak about and to speak to. And because you're someone who is experiencing this, I thought we'll just get you on. Do you want to tell us your story? Who are we looking at here in this picture with you? And first of all, just give us the background as to why you're involved with the disability sector and all of that.
Right. Well, that's my number one reason right there in my arms. That's Eddie. I have 2 boys. Eddie's my oldest, and he has ASD, autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, refractory nocturnal epilepsy, and some learning disabilities and some other musculoskeletal. So I'm not going to get into all of it because we don't actually have all night. Yeah. But he is my why, and he was my pathway. And funnily enough, he was my pathway to my own ADHD diagnosis. Not that that would really surprise you, but it's been, I guess, 10 years of navigating the disability caregiver path. And so sort of even prior to the disability funding cuts, maybe about a year ago, things escalated as they do, similar to the last time we caught up, actually, disruptions in his medication, and I had to shut down my business, which was no small feat, but it was growing and I couldn't manage that, plus the overwhelming burden of care on my shoulders, and he's more important.
So you've now transitioned to a new government as someone who uses the sector, and as the article was talking about, 6 months on since the shock disability cuts, can you tell us how is it for you 6 months after the incumbent government made these decisions when it comes to you looking after your son, the benefits your son had, the resources he had compared to what's going on now?
It's night and day, to be honest. it's hard to know where exactly to start. I suppose we come under a couple of different categories when it comes to disability funding, but the pinch that I have felt the most is the changes to respite. So right now here on my laptop beside me, and if you hear the bell ding, I'm going to run out of the room immediately, and I suggest you mute my microphone because it is a nocturnal epileptic. So his seizures happen exclusively at night.
Okay.
Hence why I'm up. I don't sleep a lot. And although technically you can use respite for anything that gives you a break from caregiving, and I'm caregiving during the day as well, it's the stuff that I find really exhausting. The staying awake, the being screamed awake if I fall asleep. And I know that it's perpetual. We've just come out of winter, and winter is always, for any disability, I'm not just saying it's particular to epilepsy, but we all find winter incredibly challenging just because there's more germs. So all the immunocompromised whānau are struggling to manage and contain illness. And with illness, especially for something like autism, which is primarily an affect regulation disorder, it comes with behavior. So it's not just the sickness. You also have somebody who can't express the pain and discomfort that they feel. So you're fielding that, which depending on the child might come with some aggression or violence or self-harm, injurious behaviors. And for me to not be able to pay for somewhere to stay means that my only option is in-home respite. And if you can hear your son screaming through the walls, you're not getting the sleep that the respite is meant to afford you. You're also probably going to get up and do the caregiving that you're paying somebody else to do just because it's not a job, it's a labor of love.
Can I just clarify? Can I clarify one thing, Katy? Because you can't go anywhere. Are you saying that under the previous government, respite care would be you'd go away and get a break for a night or something, and now that can't happen? Is that the actual change? The funding model has changed.
So the funding. So this is the thing. The funds might be there, but the exclusion criteria across the board, no matter which funding stream you're looking at, has changed so dramatically and so much. It's not like there was just that pause on March 18. The changes have been coming thick and fast up until last week. The other day, every time I ring up to confirm that my pre-approval for the things that I've already been assessed for Edward's needs is still valid, there'll be something new. It's like, oh no, you can't submit that it's out of date. And I'm like, what do you mean it's out of date? RDA, the Writing School for Disabled, just sent me that invoice. You can see on the email, it's not even 24 hours old, but the date on the invoice is outside this new exclusion criteria because they bill after Edward's done all the lessons at the end of the school term. And they're like, it's not a fresh invoice. I'm like, it's a fresh invoice. They just sent it to me. I'm a solo mum. I live in Auckland. So my living costs are just the highest out of anybody everywhere. And I'm not currently working. So now I'm saddled with debt and a boy who potentially can't continue something that is incredibly therapeutic. It's equine physiotherapy, and it's incredible for him. It's amazing for him, and he's already had to stop so many other things.
So Katy, because I'm a bit slow, and there'll be other slow people out there as well who will need us to count this. I really want to nail this down. You're saying that you do the activity, equine, did you say physiotherapy?
Yeah.
So he does that. Mm-hmm. You then get the invoice at the end of it, end of 10 sessions, 2 sessions, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. You then take the invoice to the correct department within the government to get reimbursed like you would have done under Labor, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
And they say what?
They said, no, the dates are out and it's not fitting the exclusion criteria. It's like some recency. I haven't got it in on time. And I'm like, but this is new. And he's already done the lessons. Yeah. And it's something that's been pre-approved.
So what happens to that invoice of $600 or whatever it is?
It's mine, and it's way more than $600.
Yeah.
it's way more than $600. So it's now my responsibility. I have to magic this money out of thin air after, the most expensive calendar month for me, because my power's through the roof and water's through the roof. I've had to buy extra medicines because he's been extra sick. And on top of that, I don't have, when I've got a sick child at home, like Edward's currently awaiting emergency surgery. So he's on the wait list. He's a high priority patient, but I've been told that for his type of oral surgery, the wait list is anywhere between, and I quote, 2 weeks and 2 years.
Wow.
I've never had Edward's, kind of always coming in for like acute surgery or emergency surgery. It's, it's never like, oh, this is an option. It's a nice to have. It's like no, we need it. We need it now. When we went in for one tooth last year that had a cyst, the Max Fax surgeon was like, okay, I'll see you, if not next week, the week after. That was really easy to kind of apportion time to. And ordinarily, with his current situation, which is 12 adult teeth requiring surgery, he's in a world of pain. I would never send him to school, but I also can't feasibly keep him home from school for 2 years. Plus, the school will be probably kicking us out because we're ruining their averages, by having him away. I'm not even joking.
Yeah, I got you.
The ableist rhetoric runs further than the disability cuts, but the impacts are really widespread.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly hard to pin it down. Like, yes, there was this quote unquote pause, which is obviously a hard stop, but there have been further changes to different funding streams all the time. And it's so destabilizing for me as a carer, but also for Edward. Like the worst, I think, was we just had his autism drama class just cancelled. Like, we can't continue. There is no funding. There's nothing left in the kitty. Next Friday will be the last lesson.
So that was a course that was paid for with government money. So rather than you getting invoiced, it just had to stop. Is that what you're saying?
No. So we paid a fee, but we didn't appreciate, the parents did not realize that there was a co-payment from government.
Okay.
And
the co-payment stopped. So that stopped the course.
Well, it was that, but it was also the timing, because carers who had previously been able to use their respite or carer support to pay for their portion of the fees could suddenly no longer use it. And so parents weren't able to meet their contribution fees as well, because without that additional money from their kitty. So it was kind of like, it was from both sides.
Yeah, double whammy.
It was a double whammy. They were like, well, fees are not coming in on time or with, at the rate that they were previous. And I'm like, but you know why? And they're like, no. And so I kind of explained to them on their side, and they're like, well, also, we just do not have enough from our side. So even if everybody was paying their fees on time, and even if everybody paid the full amount, it still wouldn't cover the 100,000 gap that we have to fill. And I was like, yeah, we can't give
Katy, and I apologise to you for asking all the questions. You should jump in next, Chewie. But the one thing I wanted to know is, you're obviously within that community, yeah? And I'm not trying to sound patronising with this question. It's a genuine question, because I also think about what people are wondering out there watching. Are you the exception? Is your story the exception? Or is your story your story the norm? Like, is this the norm that's happening to everybody?
I don't even think, I genuinely don't even think mine is the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
That's
just terrifying.
I was just talking to a mum today, whose son has been stood down from school for, meltdowns that turned violent, because he had no support in school, because he had been denied ORS, because that criteria also needs to be brought in. So without learning support,
that means like no teacher aid assigned.
No TA, not even an LA, not even like, not even some type of RTLB or IWS, which is like, these are transitionary supports, so they can kind of come in for like 6 to 8 weeks. Absolutely nothing. This kid had 0 supports. And so instead of having somebody there who knew him, who could de-escalate the situation, it escalated. And so now he's at home, and mum's had to stop working out of home. She works from home, but she's working full time.
Yeah.
And she has a high needs son at home who she's also somehow supposed to provide care for, who is twice her size and melting down. And she's had some of her funds. Yeah. I actually consider myself one of the lucky ones when I compare my actual lived situation with other carers, especially because the suicidality that I'm in contact with, I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I've been in this space for nearly a decade, and we all did lockdown together. And if your felt experience of that was perpetual fear and trepidation, you can kind of imagine that ours might be kind of like a level 10 up from that, knowing how vulnerable our kids were and watching the world feed the elderly and disabled to COVID-19 first. I still did not see caregivers and children fronting up and saying, I'm thinking about attempting. I just can't see any way out. I'm so beyond burnt out. My child is so beyond burnt out. We're being turned away from school. We've got no family. No one will help us. And I think I've only ever had a bout of suicidality once. And it wasn't the caregiving, although the caregiving was peak. What it was for me was that when I asked for help and when I told people I'm drowning, I really need help, it wasn't given when it would have been so easy for them to help. And that's the message from government, is people are putting up their hands and saying, I'm already in crisis. I need that thing. Whatever it was that was holding me together or holding my child together, you've stripped it away, and we're already on our knees. And it's that feeling invisible and worthless because somebody's assigned like a dollar value to you or to your child. And I'm desperate for people outside our community to see us and to reach in and reach out, because when we're not coping, we're not asking for anyone to fix us, but we just want people to know that things have never been worse. I'm comparing this to COVID. This is awful.
Chewie, do you want to offer anything? You're just sitting there listening. No, we don't. There's nothing we can actually say, Chewie, in this setting right now. Katie, you're saying it all, but is there anything you want to offer as a part of this chat?
Katie, I've got a lot for you. I'm an ADD kid. I was a difficult kid growing up. But both my siblings have it as well, and I just remember how hard my mum had to fight. And she hasn't had to carry as much as you're carrying. But there's just a very familiar thread there. I know how important respite care was. I remember there's quite a big age gap between me and my brother. But he would often come down to me at my student flat and stay with us for school holidays as respite care. And it was always something that he looked forward to hang out with his big brother. But behind the scenes, I knew how important it was for my mum and my dad just to get a little bit of pressure release. And I remember this exactly what you're describing, and this is 20 years ago, 25 years ago, of trying to do your best to fit into the requirements that the government departments are giving you to get your invoices in on time, to meet the criteria for this funding that they make you really, really work for. And then you do something wrong, as you said, it's out of date. The wrong person signed it. That activity isn't approved. All of this sort of thing. It's this obstacle course of bureaucracy that's meant to make you give up. Because if they don't have to pay it, they don't have to pay it, right? That's a win. And I see a lot of people in the chat. We want to help. We want to. I mean, I'm just pulling it out of chat. There's a lot of people that are saying, "What can we do to help you? What can we do?" So we will sort something out. We'll talk about it offline, whatever. But I think I want to contribute. Chat wants to help. I'm sure Pat would agree with this. Yeah. It might be something, whatever we can do.
I think it's just that feeling is kind of what we need. It's not so much the what or the how or the who. It's the intent and I don't know. It doesn't really matter what it is, because at the moment it feels like nobody cares if we go. It really feels like and it's not just us. I think it's our kids. We feel like it's worse than feeling unimportant, to be honest.
You're never on the front page, are you? It's landlords, or it's ferries, or it's roads, or tunnels, or whatever.
Or the All Blacks.
And I think when people talk about the difference between left and right, this is it. Do we look after people that need looking after, or do we go, they're not visible enough? We can get away with cutting these people off from help and funding, and it feels cold and mechanical.
But it's easy because they know we're so exhausted. We can't fight. That's the thing. We cannot fight back on our own. It never stops. There's no time, and that's why that they're trying to really instill that hard no, so that we just stop trying and we just give up. I really think that is the plan, if there is a plan around inventing all of these barriers that didn't exist and fly in the face of all the enabling good lives principles and approach, and it's winding things back to quite a dark place.
Can I just ask this sounds a bit strange, but can I ask a logistical question? This government comes across to us as mean and vindictive and petty, like in general what they're doing. That's how we see them for a lot of things. How have you found the staff at, I'm not sure, there's the Ministry of Disability. Who do you speak to when you're looking for your invoices?
Right, so the way it works is the ministry doesn't.
Sorry, I was going to say, what I wanted to know was is that mean vindictiveness going down and into the people you're talking to, or are they still as sort of the same as they were under Labor? Is there any vibe with your face-to-face contact with people?
It really depends. So face-to-face with Whaikaha before Whaikaha was being disbanded, I was in part of the consultation that they had just straight after the announcement, actually, and it was around a different fund, and it was a different level of public consultation, and they apologized before the minister had, and they were very gracious and they were wonderful. However, from that time until this, it's not so much the interactions with ministry, although I personally do feel not only has that deteriorated a little bit, but I guess as their power's been diluted, so has their agency and advocacy on our behalf. But in the funding holders, so we don't deal directly to ministry, I might be a little bit of an exception. There'll be a handful of other advocates and carers who, you know, make a point of going to all the things and as much as they can. I thought the turnout for that particular consultation was appalling. There was like half a dozen. The room was completely empty, except for like 5 seats. But in the funding hole providers, there's these, they don't talk about our kids by their names. They've replaced client with PWS. And I think any time you're using an acronym in place of an actual human's name, and we chose client because we wanted to step away from pathology and let go of patient. The use of an acronym is really designed to rob someone of their personhood. There's no other reason why you would do it when you have a perfectly good shorter syllable name that you could use instead.
Yeah.
And we've heard some false claims being made by either, it's only a handful, and I don't want to blanket this because as a general rule of thumb, I actually think like NASCs are good people. They're great professionals and they're wonderful at what they do. But I have heard of a couple saying, oh, we don't recognize neurodiversity as a disability anymore. Like, who is this we? And what's their medical qualification? Because the specialist that my son is under didn't study for more than 10 years just to have some woefully underqualified person say, it's not a disability. It's not disabled enough.
This is my pledge to you, Katy. I will fight that person. You find out who it is, and I will fight them in the street.
Hey, Katy, this is a kind of a unique moment. I mean, you've been a broadcaster and a TV presenter. You kind of know how this game's played. I have no idea how to wrap up this conversation. Like, I have no idea how to, why to, what to do next, if anything. Maybe we can just throw it to you and just say, tell us something we can do. And I don't actually necessarily mean, oh, flick a buck here or there. Like, what do we need to do that are the non, like, we talk about being buffers. Like, we had this conversation with Professor Margaret Mutu, and Chewie asked this fantastic question: what can we do as non-Māori, meaning literally us? And she said, be a buffer, stand in the gap. You know, if they won't listen to us, maybe they'll listen to you. You know, is this needed in the disability sector? Are the buffers needed in there?
We need more than buffers. We need allies. And even if, when I say reach in and reach out, I'm not actually asking you to come to my house and care for my kid. I don't want you to fix me. I'm not asking you to do my life for me. What I mean is, you know, I'm not expecting you to understand the raft of things that are going on for me, but you just be as simple as saying, I saw something in the news. It sounds like things are really hard for you at the moment. Are they? Because what turned things around for me when I was suicidal was somebody just being brave enough to say, are you thinking about attempting? And it was like, oh my God, somebody's giving me a hand in when I'm going under. I think it's really just that thing of being a good neighbor in the way that we were during lockdown, popping your head over the fence, or, you know, just being like, it can just be the most basic thing, a regular text, or even, you know, just popping into someone's DMs, just be like, it's been a while. Things are pretty sucky for everyone right now. Do you want to talk about it? And even if it's not, just knowing that somebody's noticing that you've gone absent can mean the world. Really does. When you're doing everything behind closed doors and behind curtains and nobody can really see into your real life.
And I guess the people watching now or listening in the, you know, when it's an uploadable podcast, even though you're here speaking to us, you can be our representative of the neighbour or the person across the road or the person at the supermarket that we may know is in a, you know, some kind of similar position to you, and to think about that for them as well. So rather than thinking about just Katy, thinking about these people in our lives that we're connected to, that we can do that kind of thing with.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be big, but it can be if you want to. I know that Labour have just started up a petition to save Whaikaha. We would really love to save our ministry. It took so long to get one, and they have barely just gotten off the starting blocks. Every signature counts. Yeah. And, you know, if you're feeling bold and brave, don't be shy about calling up your local MP and saying, this is absolutely not what I signed up for. I did not vote for this. May have voted for you, but this is a step too far.
Katy, I want to stay in touch. I like what we want to do here is make sure our audience is informed as to what's going on. I'm sorry to talk about it like it's a bit of a subject matter, but I'll stay in touch.
Well, it is.
I want to talk to you some more when that petition becomes more obvious to us. We want to talk about that, and just thanks for saying yes. Thanks for being brave and jumping on tonight and having a chat with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
We'll talk super soon, eh?
All right.
Thanks, Katy.
Right, take care.
Bye.
You can talk now, Chewie.
That's a lot, man. One of the things I was going to say, for someone in that position, when you're saying, you know, how to be visible and how to let people know what you need, it's real hard to wave a flag asking for help when you're putting all of your energy into keeping your head and the heads of your loved ones above water. And I think there are so many people that wouldn't come within 100 miles of knowing what that's like. And when we vote for people and when they promise us things, it's really easy to make that about you or about the people that you know or the situations that you know. How many people are out there waving the flag for Katy or people like her or families like hers?
Or for their Katy in their life or in their neighbourhood. Yeah.
I think as much as so many of our shows are about lashing the government and just playing the political game, I think this really focuses, in my mind, what we're here to do when I think about changing the government and that sort of thing is it's more than my team versus their team. It is about people who don't have a voice, who don't have the visibility, don't have the spare time to do a podcast 4 nights a week. Is that we wave that flag.
Hey, kia ora again. Welcome back, whānau. Thanks for watching the best of. Remember, live shows start again Monday the 13th. As another reminder as well, the merch store is currently open. Like I said earlier, we're probably going to have to take the store down after I head off on honeymoon, just because there'll be no one to service it. So get in there now if you want to get your especially your buffer merch before Waitangi Day. That is, of course, bhnshop.nz. But speaking of shop, speaking of merch, speaking of money, huge thanks to all of our patrons. In the last 7 days, a big thanks to George Terry, to Christian, to Rocket Rihari, to Mark White, to Joey Parr, and to Ruth O'Grady. Ruth O'Grady, top of the morning to you, who have all become patrons, and also Rebecca Hawkins. We won't miss you out, Rebecca. Rebecca Hawkins also in the last 7 days. Also a big shout out to Rachel Hannon. Rachel Hannon's been a patron for a wee while, but upped their patronage, changed levels. 2025 is going to be a different year for patrons. We are going to service you guys better. I understand up until this point you've mostly just been wanting to support us with a few bucks here and there, but we are going to be looking at providing more content for patrons alone, because you guys are the guys who keep this thing going day to day. Merch is great, but the patrons are the guys who help us out day to day. Thanks for joining us again tonight. We will see you tomorrow night, unless this plays on Friday. Then you'll see a live show on Monday for another best of for the other ones. And stay safe. We'll see you super soon. Hooroo. Hey.